Hi, this is Brendan Murphy here, and welcome to the Please Do Something podcast. I'm a singer and a songwriter who will be talking to inspiring creative people about how and why they do what they do and some of the lessons they've learned along the way. Thanks for listening. From demo tapes to final master, join Greg Canty and me as we explore the making of the four of us' latest album, Crescent Nights. Track by track, we'll share the creative journey and studio stories that brought this album to life. Let's begin.
Brendan Murphy, how are we doing?
Great, Greg. Great. Just before we started to hit the record button, you said to me, this album, it's a different album for the four of us. And I'm thinking, wow, he's listened to every album now up until this current record, and he's going, this is a very different album. I would have thought by now he would have gone, well, I know every trick in the book that you guys do to put a song together, and this is more of the same. Well, I didn't think you'd say that. So I'm actually thrilled that you were surprised by this record. Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, I'm not sure.
Well, I was going to say, my God, where did those 8 years go to? We left the island.
Oh, yes. Okay, right. Oh, yeah. Sugar Island, yeah.
Yeah, and we arrived at Crescent Nights. And despite all of your best intentions to go to Nashville, polish this, as John Spillane would say, that hit factory of pumping out new songs quicker and everything. Yeah. 8 years on, and wow, it's a different four of us album.
Well, thank God, because it's bloody 8 years. I mean, you know what I mean? That's part of the thing. You're trying all the time to redefine yourself to yourself. You're trying to surprise yourself. I'm getting excited about this. So maybe it can excite someone else. And of course, the other problem is that when you've made a lot of albums, the biggest problem you have isn't sort of writing a good song. It's writing a good song that doesn't sound like another song you've already written. You're trying to wrong foot yourself to come up with something different. So I'm really happy that we pulled that off.
Yeah, and honest to goodness, listening to it, I'm nearly thinking, where are the four of us? You've been saying to me, you know, we want to play stuff at the heart of everything, are the two acoustic guitars. And I'm listening to this saying, where are they? It's a totally different vibe from start to finish. I think on so many tracks, the vocal is quite different. The harmonies are quite different. The sound is quite different. Your typical structure of the album with a few ballad type tracks, I was waiting for them. Nearly telling myself, okay, you need to listen to this album through a totally different lens. Pretend it's the very first time you're listening to the four of us. You go, oh, that's interesting. I've heard nothing like this before. Honest to goodness, that's how I was feeling towards it. And at first I'm thinking, okay, well, you need to give this another listen. And after a few listens, you'll think, oh yeah, that signature four of us style and everything else. It is actually really, really different. And I know the process was quite different, and the time of the world and everything that we've been through are quite different. But my God almighty, it's a really different four of us album. And congratulations.
I feel it's a different four of us album. I feel that if you're going to spend 8 years making a record, it would need to be a different record, you know. And the reason it took 8 years was because on the one hand, we wanted it to be really different. And on the other hand, we had an idea for what the theme of the album, and we didn't want to release it until we felt we'd pulled off the theme of the record, much like Sugar Island.
Okay. And something that I want to do this time, and I know we're going to have this conversation over a few sessions, because there's too much to talk about, there really is. While a lot of the stars went up there in the sky like Crescent Nights, a few of the stars fell by the wayside. We had a few falling stars that didn't make the cut. And if you don't mind, on each of these conversations, I'd love to have a chat with you about the process of how they came into being and how sadly you had to let them go as well. So I know we're going to talk about the album, but can I talk about Lean In for a Kiss to start with?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that song didn't make the record. So this record was made in a different way than any other record we've made, in that we had started during lockdown doing an online show every Thursday night. And we said we are going to let anybody that watches this show into our behind the scenes as we make this record. We're going to take them on the journey of demos and half songs and songs, and we're not going to apologize. We're going to say, this is it, warts and all. I'm not sure about this. I think the chorus isn't good enough. And so they got to know the people that watched that show religiously, and it's still going, of course. It's on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube every Thursday night. But it was like having an accountability partner. And that song, Lean In for a Kiss, in particular, of all the songs that we did that didn't make the record, a lot of people loved that song. And in fact, there was quite a number of songs that people loved. And normally when you're making a record, the songs that you write that don't make the record, no one really hears until they do the deluxe version. You know what I mean? But in our case, the people who were watching that show, which were hundreds of people a week, they were really getting invested in all the songs, including the songs that didn't make it. So, to cut a long story short, when we did the pre-order for the album, we allowed people the chance to purchase the songs that did record. Leaning for a Kiss was one of those songs. But it was on theme. And the theme of the record, the album that we made, was basically nights out, teenage, that sense of freedom you get when you're 16, 17. You're out, you're in that sort of, it's such an exciting period of life for me, I think, and for Declan. You're allowed to go to nightclubs, girls. It's just, you could leave the north if your friend had a car, or could get use of his daddy's car. They go to the dock or wherever, and so it was freedom, really. And we said, okay, well, let's make a record of that sort of centers on this idea of nights and nights out. And of course, the big issue that you had when you were that age was when you went to discos, as they were called then, was the slow set. So the slow set in a disco, for people who are too young to remember, because I don't think there is slow sets anymore. But there really was. I don't know how people managed to get to base one with a girl, like in terms of like sort of even having a conversation in a disco now, or a nightclub, or whatever they call it. But back then, in the middle of the night, they would have a slow section. So it might be, When I Need You by Leo Sayer, or, Hello by Lionel Richie, or some sort of, soppy is the wrong word, but some sort of ballad that, or Lady in Red by Christopher. And basically that would be your chance to ask somebody up for a slow dance. The slow section was really what it was about. And then if you were dancing with someone and after the song one, the normal thing, if it wasn't going well, you were really desperate to get them. If you were interested in them, you wanted to get the girl to song two. So the biggest hurdle you had was the gap between the first slow song and the second slow song. But if she stayed and didn't say, I have to go back to my friends, if she stayed and danced with you for song two of the slow set, now things got interesting. Now you had a chance of actually, sort of getting lucky, and it could be the start of a wonderful relationship. And then at a certain point, sometimes you wouldn't know when to make the next move. And sometimes the girl would be, I've been in that relationship thing where a girl was wanting you to give her a kiss, but you didn't want to get it wrong. You were very nervous in making the first move. So the song is a conversation that's going on inside this young fella's head. Basically, should I lean in for a kiss before it's too late? You know, and then the song resolves with as she leans in for a kiss. So she ultimately fits the guy in the song to it. And then he leans in for a kiss and they both lean in for a kiss. But the song is that sort of whole crack that his boys are drinking at the bar and her friends are sort of circling around and he's very nervous.
I told myself so many times, don't lose your nerve, just read the signs. Don't leave this girl in a state of confusion and mess this up. Tonight's been my lucky night. We danced and I held her tight, and it looks like she finds me amusing. Should I lean in for a kiss before it's too late? The night will soon be over, don't hesitate. Should I lean in for a kiss? Lean in. Once the music stopped, she'd be on her way. Now she's looking at me as if to say, lean in for a kiss.
It was a great idea, I thought, but I was nervous about, I think I was nervous about the consent element as well. You know what I mean? It was like, it just felt, it was very true to that time, but I don't know how it necessarily would have translated, you know? What do you think?
Well, as you're speaking, I'm back in Highfield Rugby Club disco when I'm 13, 1980. And the discos were in the afternoon.
Wow.
Literally. And during the winter it was better because it kind of got dark at some point in time. And the lean in for a kiss was really good if you got the song too. But more often than not, if you've gone through those few steps, there was the walk of shame alternative.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, buddies.
Exactly, where she said, no, thank you. And that kills you for the whole night.
Oh, totally.
But whatever confidence you had to make that walk in the first place, once you've done the walk of shame, that's probably it until the next Sunday afternoon disco.
Yeah, actually, let's not beat about the bush. You get enough walk of shame, basically put you off discos.
Yeah, exactly.
I had friends that just refused to go to discos because they took one walk of shame too many. Yeah. And just went, discos aren't for me. You know what I mean? And they were, emotionally scarred for most of their teens and probably 20s. It was, it's rough. There's no getting around it. If you want a relationship to move on with anybody, there's no getting around it. But that context was very much related to that period in time. And that's why I thought it was a great idea. I thought the melody of the song was great, but ultimately I was a bit nervous about it. So it didn't make the record. But some people think it's the song that got away.
The theme of the album, when did you settle on this idea of Crescent Nights and that being the whole theme for everything and young bucks going out enjoying themselves?
Funny enough, I remember I had a conversation with our mutual friend, Joe, of White Horse Guitar Club in Ballincollig, and he loved Sugar End. He said, I love it because it's nearly like a play. I haven't really heard that before. I haven't heard anybody do it like that before. I said, yeah, but I don't know what we're going to do next. And he said, well, you could write Act 2. And you just Sugar End's Act 1. And that stayed with me, And I thought, well, what would Act 2 be? And of course, Act 2 would be, you add another 5 years, another 4 years, and you're in a rich vein. So basically that period just before the band, but it's sort of from sort of the end of your school years to the end of your college years in our case. Such a rich vein. I love the idea, but once I thought, that's what I'd like to write about. And that's Act 2. That's a different. If I go into that area, then there's more rhythm, there's more beats. It's got to feel a wee bit groovy. It's got to feel a wee bit dancey. How the hell are we going to pull that off? You know what I mean? But I can't go writing about discos and nightclubs and this sort of crack if it doesn't have a sense of excitement and a sense of rhythm and a sense of, it's got to have that in it. So when we started writing the album, it just, as luck would have it, Enda's studio in Amberville had become freer than it normally had. And he had worked for Van Morrison forever, and he had called it quits. So he was relaxing for a bit, but wanting to write songs. So he said, just come on up to the studio and we'll work there, which was the opposite of how we'd worked in Sugar Ray, and basically, which was very much two guys in a room with two acoustic guitars trying to come up with something. And Enda said, look, why don't we try and write, well, I'm not sure if it was Enda actually. I think we all sort of said, let's not repeat ourselves. Let's try and write from this idea of like rhythm and excitement. And so he set up in the control room. I was behind the guitar with a mic, and Declan was behind his guitar with a mic, and Enda was on either a bass guitar or on the Moog or on the keyboards or whatever instrument he had near him, and there was a ton of them. And Enda or Declan would put in a rhythm. They'd just come up with a rhythm that was sort of interesting and a groove. And really we would try and jam over this groove, which was the exact opposite of what we had done in Sugar Island, and actually how we had sort of written many, many moons ago for more like Songs for the Tempted and stuff like that, when we were influenced by bands like Talking Heads. So he was saying, don't be afraid, I think, of getting outside of the two acoustic guitars. And mentally I went, okay, well, that's okay. If I'm holding an acoustic guitar and Declan's holding an acoustic guitar, it's never going to get too far away from that sound anyway, because that's going to be the center of whatever songs we write, regardless of what end is playing and what the rhythm's doing. Declan wasn't taking out an electric guitar. I wasn't taking out a xylophone. It was two acoustic guitars were still it had to work on those two things. And that's really the way the whole record was written. Well, not the whole record, actually. There was a couple of songs that were written differently, but most of it.
Is that the demo versions of those songs that we hear on the album?
Yeah, because they've all got these wee grooves.
Yeah. So go on, pick your first one. Pick your first demo for me to bring us into that world, to bring us into the studio with you, Declan and Enda.
Well, the first song I'm going to pick is Murphy's Place, which is... Murphy's Place was basically me playing a sort of Enda was on the bass, Declan had a groove going, and I was playing some sort of a whacked out acoustic guitar thing that was nearly Paul Simon-y, really, like a sort of Graceland-y type rhythm. And it just sounded like, oh, well, that doesn't sound like anything. That sounds sort of interesting, but, what are we going to write about? So, so you get the groove first, and then I think I started singing Live It Up and Give It Up. It just sounded like, oh, this guy's having a good time, live it up and give it up. That's how it started. And then at some point it went from what would you be living up and what would you be giving up? And then we were sitting talking about it, and we were trying to put it all in the same. And we thought about the times when our dad, who was a bookie, would enlist the help of myself and Declan to work on Grand National Day, because that was the only day that he was totally overrun with people looking to bet. People that never bet would bet on Grand National Day. And he would take us in, but none of us were interested in the business. It was his business, and he had done very well out of it. And I think he thought, because I was the oldest, that I might take over the reins of it at one stage. But my lack of interest became pretty apparent, So, if you're are you playing a demo now? Is that what you're going to play?
The demo's going on now.
Okay, well, the demo is basically, this is us when we're sort of like thinking, oh yeah, maybe live it up, give it up, live it up. We could write about, one of the punters, one of the guys is putting on the bets, who's thinking, I should give this up, but I'm going to live it up if I win this bet. And that became interesting because then the idea was that the main character in the song isn't me. The main character in the song is a guy putting on the bet, but he's facing me at the hatch, And early in the song, I hadn't really got that together when the demo was being... I just worked at it until finals. I think I had it together. But in the early song, we were just getting off on this sort of... it was more groove than song, which was fine because we knew we would just keep hammering away until we got a song out of it.
And you don't mess around with people and their bets. Did he trust you and Declan with these little receipts and everything to not mess it up, did he?
I messed it up all the time, and, but he had no option because we had no interest. We would be sitting watching Match of the Day, and he would be, there'd be a queue of like 10 for Dad, and there'd be one person at the hatch for me, But the way it worked with Dad was that the big people who were putting on the big bets refused to go to the hatch that I was at. And the complaints just sort of kept mounting, the complaints about, the way I was handling or the change I was giving or whatever, they kept mounting, and plus a lot of the punters didn't like the fact that they had to deal with a guy who was like about 15. It just seemed like an insult that they were handing their hard-earned money over to this kid that is basically it was a bit like you go into an accountant's office, instead of dealing with the accountant, you're dealing with a guy who's on work experience. It was the same, you got the same sort of feeling off them, we just thought this is a rich vein, and also we were occupying a space that we were enjoying, which is no one else could have written this song this way. You see, this is the world we live in now. It's like Moon and June and all that old songwriting stuff, the classic songwriting, they've all been written, So really now, songwriting has sort of matured to the point, as far as I'm concerned, where the more specific you are, the more interested I am, whether I'm writing it or whether someone else is doing it.
Yeah, and that's that bit of consistency that you've had again with the other albums, that strength of songwriting and storytelling. It's very, very playful, and you get the fun there. And I'm just thinking what you're describing. You didn't want to be there, and the punters certainly didn't want you serving them.
And on the demo, it sounds like the guy is in a good mood. The song sounds like someone's in a good mood. The musicians are in a good mood. So you have to do then, okay, why would he be in a good mood? Well, he hasn't lost his money yet. So you were trying to write the song from the perspective of a guy who's basically, he's going to give betting up, but he's expecting to win. And then when he does win, he's going to live it up. That didn't make the final lyric, but the whole song was hanging on live it up and give it up during the demo. But ultimately, at some point, we sort of put up our hands and went, that is not good enough. You've got a half-written song there, now where are you going to take it? So when you play the demos, that's why it's a demo and it isn't a finished song.
How did it become a great song?
It became far better when we wrote a middle eight. Now, a middle eight is a section that only happens once in a song. So in a song, normally, in a song, you've got a verse, in a normally constructed song: a verse, a bridge, and a chorus. So the verse lays out the story. The bridge sort of gets you excited about a chorus that should imminently be coming, and then the chorus should lift you up, and then we drop back down to the verse again. But at a certain point, there's a sort of reflection in the song. In David Bowie's Let's Dance, it's, and if I sit up, then dance with me. And if she says, no, to met you burning part would that my love and burning like a flower. You know that bit in Let's Dance? You know the bit where the whole song sort of, yeah. Well, that's the middle eight in that song. It only happens once, but then it stops you getting bored with the verse and the chorus. Bring that back in again. So we wrote a middle eight that we liked because the song was a groove, and the problem with the groove, but it didn't. We needed another section. So in the demo version, it's just all groove. There is no middle section. So we took that middle eight and turned it into a bridge. So that then became, instead of being a middle eight, it became sort of the verse. And then we stuck this bit in and then the chorus. So even though the verse and the chorus are exactly the same chords, this is an old trick. You think you're hearing something different in the chorus because we've introduced this new element in the bridge.
So listen carefully to see if you can see the similarity when we play it.
A slot machine thumped like a tambourine, fingers of nicotine, search for another score. It's not gone lunchtime yet, but we're packed to the door. Wish me luck, driving my heart crazy. One last time, wish me luck. Soon I'll be rich and lazy. Lay it all on the line.
St. Gabriel's Drive. Is that the only most tangible connection between Sugar Island and Crescent Nights?
Yes, absolutely. But actually, it's the most tangible connection between Crescent Nights and Heaven and Earth.
Okay.
Because when we were doing the demos for Heaven and Earth, St. Gabriel's Drive was written then.
Is it a place?
No, I had a title. Sometimes the way I work is that sort of like because I'd written all these songs, and my first album I made a fatal mistake, which was I didn't have titles. You're humming stuff melodically and stuff like that, and then you're looking for words to put in, and while you're just scatting, which is the way we would write. They'd be playing like chords, and I'd be waffling away singing something. But because I didn't have a title, I'd be grabbing for something. Like on our first album, we have a song called Jolene, right? Which is not a good idea. It's going to be better than Dolly Parton's. Not much of a chance, really. But I did it and then put up on the record. And I never made that mistake again. So I said, okay, one way around that is to have a bank of titles that are interesting and then shove them in whenever you think what you're singing could do with an anchor, a lyrical anchor. And I had this St. Gabriel's Drive. I don't know where I got St. Gabriel's Drive. I think I might have got it from Mulholland Drive or something like that, David Lynch, Lord rest him, which is a film that I was enjoying watching at the time. I'm not 100% sure. But it just sounded good. It sounded cool. It was like a cool place. So when we were doing Heaven and Earth, we had done a demo of a song that was called St. Gabriel's Drive, but had no lyrical story apart from a come on, a sort of come on. There, and we go back now, move forward to lockdown, and or just maybe after lockdown actually. So we're writing this album. We're in the middle of writing Crescent Nights, but because we have this show every Thursday, and we're only doing our songs. So every week you're having to come up with a new idea for a new show to your audience. You can't be repeating it. So as a result, we've had to really scratch our heads each Thursday and go, so what's this show going to be about? And one of the shows we decided the subject was making heaven and earth. It allowed us to play the songs to our audience on Facebook and YouTube from heaven and earth, answer questions about the making of the album. And then Declan, unbeknownst to me, he's a bit of a hoarder, he found the demos, heaven and earth. Well, I came to him on a Thursday evening to do the show, having learned off the songs from the album. And he says, I've got the demos, some of the songs that didn't make the record. And I said, don't play them to me now. Let's wait and play them to me on air in front of the audience so I can react the same way they do, because I haven't heard these songs since 2003. So he played me St. Gabriel's Drive, and I mean, it's still on YouTube. You can see my reaction to it. I'm going, hang on a minute. That's great. And Declan's a bit like, think so? And I go, we should be working on that. So the show ends and I'm going, give me that demo. And so I give him the demo, and then I start working on it, writing lyrics on it. And Declan's a bit like, why are you writing lyrics for that? It didn't make it the last time. What are you going to do? I said, no, I think it's got something. He said, I don't like it. And I said, why not? And he said, it makes me feel tense when I listen to it. There's no release in the song. And the second he said that, I went, right, I've got to write a song that's all tension. I've got to write a lyric that's all tension. And then that'll actually just get us off the hook, because you're supposed to feel tense. And then I thought, okay, so Gabriel's Drive's a place. It's during the Troubles. It's a guy we went to school with. Because the whole crack was that when we were growing up was that mum and dad, sort of our house, which had a bigger garden than a lot of the gardens around us, became a compound, really. Mum and dad did want us hang with our friends on the street at night, and we resented it at the time. Looking back on it now, I completely understand why they were like that, because nights when, there was lots going on in the streets in Newry at night, and you could easily, particularly at that young impressionable age, get yourself into trouble. And some of the people that we went to school with did just that. And also there were estates in Newry that you couldn't really avoid getting into trouble if you were brought up on these estates. They were sort of no-go areas for the army, but every now and again the army or the security forces would venture in, and all hell would break loose. So the song is really this idea of St. Gabriel's Drive. I didn't want to use any of the estates that they all still exist in Newry, but they're all beautiful estates now with, all peaceful, affluent. It's not the same story at all. I didn't want to tar them with a brush relating to, 1978 or whatever it was, So the song is, the idea is, I named it St. Gabriel's Drive, and it's the idea is basically it's a teenager who's brought up on this estate and whose older brothers are going out and he just wants to be like them. So he sneaks out and they sort of reluctantly, even though they know he's young, let him go along with them. It took a few rewrites because that's a tough enough song lyrically to put together. And also I loved In the Ghetto, which is an Elvis song. I was a huge Elvis fan. And In the Ghetto, I loved In the Ghetto starts with a baby crying and ends with a baby crying. And I thought, I'm going to use this idea, but change it. So the song starts with lights are out and in the estate, but they're just waiting for this, explosion of sort of, they're waiting for the riot to begin, really. And it starts like that, and then it ends. So that you get the sense that this is happening. This is a cyclical take. It's not just a once off. This is something that's happened repeatedly in this spot, Of all the songs that I've written, I would say it's the most overtly political, lyrically.
What you mentioned about tension, it was a perfect way to grab your attention at the beginning of the album, and you're in it straight away, and you can feel the tension of it. And thematically, it just connects so nicely to Sugar Island, a continuation of that story, as Joe Carey and the White Horse was saying.
The reason that we put it as song number one is that a lot of the rest of the record is like really about having fun.
Yeah.
It's about enjoying yourself, and it's about the whole upside of this sort of like, which is, so even though I'm telling that story, essentially my teenage years were fun. I mean, it was great. It was your version of normality, but we weren't thinking about the trouble. We were thinking about going out, and we were thinking about all the music and all the things that teenagers in the South were thinking about. We just had that thing going on in the background. So much like Bird's Eye View and Sugar Island, to say, look, this is the backdrop to what else is going on. So I can sing about all that other stuff as long as people understand that this is the world that we were living in back then. You know what I mean? So if I'm crossing the border, I'm crossing the border during this time, if you know what I mean. It was a way to sort of place it and connect it to Sugar Island from a time frame point of view.
Lights are out, no one's sleeping. Hearts are beating fast, time is creeping. A necklace of nails stretching 20 foot wide hangs around the neck of St. Gabriel's Drive. Behind the houses, stacked like boxes, dug out in the fields with the hares and foxes, lying in wait for some kind of sign. Just another night on St. Gabriel's Drive. Sean, stay at home, you're too young. His brothers say before they run to join the fight, but he follows. And soon they're calling, come on, you can make it. Grab a stick or a stone, go on, take it. Come on with us, come on with us, come on.
That song, St. Gabriel's Drive, it had an outing before there was any album anywhere. It did make an appearance in the middle of COVID. For anyone who was indoors watching TV on RT, like so many of us when we couldn't go anywhere and do a whole pile. What was that show?
It was a show called Session, and it was a show where they picked 4 or 5 small venues that had punched above their weight in terms of the impact that they had on live music in Ireland and beyond. And the place that they picked in Donegal was a place called McGrory's of Culdaff, where they used to get people coming over from America because the brothers that owned it were rabid music fans. So they'd sort of really influential people like acoustic guys like Townes Van Zandt and Guy Clark, really, really fantastic, legendary sort of songwriters. And so they invited us to do that along with other mixture of trad and folk acts. So it was nice to be asked to do it, and we did St. Gabriel's Drive, which we'd written and we knew was a strong track, and also because it was a folky sort of a programme, we knew how strong the track sounded just on the 2 acoustics, even at that stage, that really the 2 acoustics, we could get it across. And I remember when it was aired, I got a text or an email from Paul Brady, who I'd interviewed on this podcast, actually. But I don't know Paul well, but obviously big fan. And he just out of the blue, he just texted, love the song as it was going out. And at that point I thought, well, we're on the right tracks here. He's sort of saying, done it all. So a guy like that, and you're down to 2 acoustic guitars and you're trying to get a song across. And I thought, well, this record, we're on the right tracks if we're getting that sort of feedback. from someone. Because that's the thing, it's one thing getting feedback, but it's another thing getting feedback from people who, songwriters you've aspired to sort of, to write songs as powerful as some of the songs that he's written.
So a lot of this recording and writing, I presume, a lot of that happened during COVID, didn't it?
No, actually, COVID was more like the brakes on that activity. COVID stopped the record in its tracks. Because we were going up and doing these recordings and writings every week when we weren't touring. And then COVID, when COVID hit, I wasn't even seeing Declan at one stage initially. COVID started in March. We didn't do our first live stream until October. I didn't really see Declan. But at that point, what I started doing was I started trying to write some stuff to get better on the guitar, to get better. And Sharon Vaughan, my friend from Nashville, she rang me up because she wasn't writing with people really as much. And she rang me up and I told her about the project that I was doing with End and Declan. And she said, count me in, I want to be involved. So we wrote once a week, every week. I wrote songs with her once a week, every week. And, I said, but I want it to be about this. I want it to be about this. We probably wrote about 17, 18 songs. And of the songs that we wrote, I think there's 2 or 3 on the record. 2 anyway. Tree of Life, Miracle and More. And yeah, there's 3. They're the 3 songs that aren't very narratively about the period. All the songs that I tried to write with her, the specific about the period, we didn't pull it off. But we wrote some other songs that did. But the songs that did work from that period were Me, Declan and End. Once we got the other side of COVID, part of the 8 years was about that. And then there was a lot happening. End was talking about selling his studio at that point, post-COVID. He had sort of wanted to move. He was talking about selling up. And so suddenly there was a panic on from our end. You had this like amazing studio with this amazing gear, and is basically saying, I'm selling up in 12 months or 18 months or whatever. And he wasn't joking. So suddenly we were in a hurry to turn these demos and half songs into finished songs.
Tell me about Crescent Nights.
Crescent Nights was a bit like Sugar Island. We had Sugar Island as like, this should be the title of the album. Before we had the album, we went, this is a great album title. Now we've just got to write an album, make sense of that title. And that's early on, I had, I was talking about the song titles that I had. I had Crescent Nights. I got it as Crescent Nights. And myself and Declan, particularly, we went, oh, that's it. That's the album title. Now we've got to write an album that makes sense, but we're going to need a song called Crescent Nights. And we're getting all these other songs. And then he had a riff that I heard and I went, one of the Ender riff things that we'd done. And I kept trying to put Crescent Nights to it. And I wrote, and none of it worked. And, we kept going up to Enders to try and at various stages, like people who, were watching the album closely, making of it, like my brother Paul, who used to be in the band, he went, Crescent Nights, he had heard the demo and he said, it's not going to make it, is it? It's not there. The song's not there.
2 a.m., a wintry wet November evening, plastic cup in hand, wandering through the Holy Land. With a ragged band of ill-begotten friends and strangers, all searching for a party we've heard of secondhand. listening out for a signal or a clue. Was it night on 19 Fitzroy Avenue? We don't want to let the moment down, that's right. Crescent Night, sipping snake bite in the bar.
The early version of it just wasn't. I was desperately trying to get it across, but the real problem wasn't in the lyrical end. The real problem was, and I remember I nailed it when we were on one day. We were on our way up to Endus, and we had said we're going to work on Crescent Nights. And Endus sort of groaned, like, oh, jeez, you know what I mean? Wasted time, let's work on something else, what's the point, but I'm thinking, Declan's thinking, that's the title of the album. We've got to make it work. And I was sitting in the back and of the car. Declan was driving up to Ballymena, which, by the way, was nearly a 3-hour journey. So when you go up to Endus, you stayed over because you weren't driving back. You know what I mean? You went from Carlingford and you would stay over for 2 days. So it was two days of pretty intense work with Endus. And, you start at 10 in the morning, you finish at 12 or 1 at night. So no wonder he was groaning, because as far as he was concerned, the song wasn't there, and, Declan was saying, what do you think? He said to me, what do you think the problem was? And again, I remember I put myself in Sharon's, as if Sharon was sitting beside me, Sharon, who had written all these Nashville songs, and really is just so much wisdom about the craft of songwriting. And I said, if Sharon was looking at that song, she would say, sorry, boys, but you don't have a chorus. So I was singing Crescent Nights, but it didn't sound, the song, it wasn't lifting. It wasn't lifting. It wasn't sounding like, oh, well, that's a chorus. Again, it's a problem with writing grooves. You're in the groove, but you can't get out of the groove. You need to create, you need to give the idea of, like, this song is going somewhere. And the best way to do that is, first of all, a bridge. So again, Crescent Nights, same thing. We've essentially the groove, which doesn't change. The verse is exactly the same as the chorus. It's exactly the same chords, playing exactly the same thing, roughly. There's a few wee things going on, but really, basically, it's the same thing. But we came up with this sort of thing where, I don't know how we did. It's probably a middle eight, where the song stops and I go, hey, moon in the sky, turn a blind eye to what transpires here. Like a sort of a croony thing that's unlike the groove. And when we did that, we put that in, and then we put the groove back in. And the idea was I wasn't allowed to sing anything like the verse, So the other thing that Sharon would say is, your chorus singing should be higher generally than your verse singing. So you go la 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 la, and then you go up, so that's the chorus, But I was already up quite high by the time. But what's new? That's the same with it. I do this all the time. She hits me, bird's eye view, sunlight. I'm already at a sort of like higher than I want to go, and I have to go bloody higher again. So at that point, I was practically octaving when I went into the that's like you're into falsetto there. But when I did it, I could see Declan End looking around like by Jove, he's got it sort of thing, and we got out of just this groove, and we had a song with Crescent Night as the title. But we worked harder on that song than we did. And then it was like, you're in a disco. The song is about being in a disco in Belfast, a place that we, as students, went to every Thursday because they locked up the city at night. So back during the Troubles. So if you were a student, there was a sort of area around the university where everybody just had to go out because you couldn't go anywhere else. You couldn't go into the town and do anything. Disco, and then you'd be looking for a house party in one of the student houses that were littered around the university area. And the song is about that. It's about, the place was called the Crescent Bar, and Crescent Nights, Crescent Bar. It's always great when you've got if the song works for people that don't know the name of the Crescent. So it's an in-joke. If you're from Belfast of a certain age, you'll know that Crescent Nights isn't about the moon. It's about a place. But if you don't know the Crescent Bar, you'll think you're just out on a night inspired. And so the idea is it's supposed to work on multiple levels. And again, I got to hand it to End and Declan on the production of that song. There's one point when I was saying, how can we make it more dancey without, it's got to work on acoustic grooves. So there's a lot of instruments that don't work very well with an acoustic guitar. And the secret of the album was that it was acoustic. The grooves were all acoustic, so there might be bass going on and percussion and keyboards and stuff like that. But essentially, Declan's playing and I am playing acoustics for all of it. There's not much electric on the album, really, at all. And that's the way we wanted it, because that is the connection. We didn't want to try and confuse people into thinking that we've turned into a band that made man alive again. But it was a fine line because, as you said, it's a very different sounding record. There's a lot more rhythm in it. It's created headaches for us now that we're about to come out and tour it because, it's a bigger sound, but we're having a lot of fun with it. So of all the songs on the record, the biggest headache. But, we know where to go. We knew that was going to be the album, and I'm really happy. Like it's our current single. And it just shows you that sometimes songs that take a long time are not worth the time that you spend. And you always get nervous when you're working a long time on a song and it's not really working out for you. Sometimes it's because the song ultimately there's a problem with either the lyric or the key or the something. And but this one, we stuck at it, and I feel was very happy with how it turned out.
Yeah, and you end up getting that song that's, as we were saying at the beginning, so different to everything else.
This rag bag of ill-begotten friends and strangers, all praying we'll find a party in the Holy Land somewhere. We're on a chain gang, slaves to anyone who's willing to let us crash land into their pied-a-terre. Sky, turn a blind eye to what transpires.
You're no strangers to innovation, so maybe we'll finish on this one. And I know that song came out in the middle of COVID as one of those initiatives. The other initiative during COVID was you and Declan doing Ask Us Anything on Thursday nights and inviting the audience literally straight into the studio and becoming part of the songwriting process, bringing your craft to us, the fans, in your own very unique way. And of course, you went a stage further as well, and you invited the audience literally into the songwriting process with a very interesting initiative and idea. And I think it resulted in one of these songs that didn't make the album, but maybe we'll close out this session by talking about it. What was the song where you actually asked the audience to give us a name and we'll write the song about a name? I think they had to vote about the name, didn't they?
That's right. I mean, that shows you how desperate we were at one stage. We were enjoying the process. It was such a thrill to open up the creative process to people. Now, there may have been a glass or two of wine involved because we normally have a drink when we're doing it. I said, I tell you what, you email us, give us a song title, either in the comments or at hello@thefourofus.com. And I'm going to look at them. I'll pick the best one and then we'll write a song around that title. And Declan looked at me like I had three heads, because he was thinking, rightly, that this is the band that take months and years to make an album. And I've just basically said, we're going to do it in a week. and play the results back to you. And then, believe it or not, what happened then was it was lockdown straight after that. I couldn't write the song with him. It was one of those ones where they closed everything down. You couldn't visit anybody again. It had opened up and then they closed it down. So suddenly I'm in the house and I knew Declan was going, well, that's the end of that. Perfect excuse not to write that song. But because I'd been writing, on my own with Sharon, I was using that as a sort of an incentive to get better on the guitar. So the thing about writing with Sharon was that she didn't play any instruments. So when I would write with her, I'd be on a Skype call and she would be expecting me to have something that's remotely interesting on the guitar, But I was in the middle of that because I'd done a lot of that at that point with Sharon during this whole COVID period. So I thought, no, I know how to do this. I'm going to go and get the guitar out and muck around and see what I come up with. So that song called Vermilion was actually, I looked at all the titles that came in and there was one called Vermilion and I went, what is vermilion? I didn't know what that word, I looked it up and it was a color. It's like a vibrant red. And I thought, oh, come on now, that's just perfect. So I picked that song and I started experimenting with guitar tunings. And that song was written, I think, in Open D or Dadgad. And I was having a lot of fun doing that. And much to Declan's surprise, then we did Ask Us Anything the following week, but we did it split screen. He was in his house and I was in my house. And I says, I've done it. I've written the song, So he was surprised when he heard it because it wasn't embarrassingly bad, neither embarrassingly bad on the lyrical front, nor indeed on the guitar playing front. So I have to thank Adrian Taff, who is actually the guy that came up with the song title Vermilion. So, but again, it was another one of those songs that, it didn't fit the rhythm of the record, didn't fit the lyrical content of the record. So it didn't make the record. It made the songs that didn't make the record. I mean, there was a ton of them. The way you do it is you're writing a lot of songs, but you're hoping constantly to write something that actually fits into the theme that you'd like the record to be about. But ultimately, if we had written enough great songs that was on a completely different theme, we would have run with that. A record sort of reveals itself. You sort of write your way into it, but it's better if you're trying to steer the ship somewhere. But you've got to be loose enough to maybe just go off in a completely different direction. But fortunately for us, I think that ultimately we did steer ourselves into a collection of songs that fitted together well enough that the theme of the record, we could call it Crescent Nights. And I'm really glad in particular that song, Crescent Nights, sort of worked as well as it did. But those other songs, Leaning for a Kiss, Vermilion, all the songs that didn't make the record, that's just part of the journey. And it's been great on this record that actually we were able to give some people the opportunity to have those songs, because in some cases they prefer them. Like I'm sure Adrian Taft's favorite song on the album that never made it, the song that he co-wrote, well, he made up the title. As I said to Adrian, you can't copyright a title, Adrian. So unfortunately, you can't get paid for this.
Sorry, Adrian, if you're listening.
Matches my burning bloodshot eyes, the shade on her lips, someone that I never should have kissed, a neon hotel sign, Vermilion, my colorful lies, Vermilion, crimson boxing bow found in the pocket of hold the cold. A woman betrayed. Go to hell, the last words that she said. I drown my sorrows with red wine. Vermilion, never heeded that stop sign. Vermilion, the color runs and runs. It runs and runs. The color runs and runs. From the gates of Hades to my base desires, coming at me like a forest fire. Scarlet warning.
So before we finish off, just at a very practical level, for copies of the album, where can people go to, Brendan?
Well, it's obviously it's on all the streaming services, but we have thefourofus.com is where you can pick it up on a physical copy of it. And we've done a very nice thing on the vinyl in that we've done a limited edition sparkling vinyl, because the cover of the album is a crescent moon mirror ball hanging in outer space. And Declan did a lovely gatefold design. The actual vinyl itself, we found out that Neville, who does our manufacturing, he rang me excitedly one day to tell me that you now could get vinyl that was sparkly. And we all got very excited about that. And then he sent over a couple of samples. We even got even more excited. So we've done the album in gatefold sparkling vinyl, and very, very excited about it. It looks fantastic. It looks really great. I'm really proud of this record. I know it's only just out, really, and I'm really happy that it sounds different. I'm excited about that, because part of the reason you sort of fall out of love with your favorite bands is that they keep making the same record. People think they want to hear it, but they don't really. Everybody wants something new.
Yeah. Brendan, thank you so much. And let's tune in again for the next episode of Crescent Nights.
Well, thanks, Greg. It's been a blast talking to you, as usual.
Yeah, take it easy. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to the Please Do Something podcast. If you'd like to get in touch, just send an email to brianmurphy@me.com.